Abandoned mum. Renovates old house with her kids to start a new life. What they found inside left everyone stunned. Before we continue, consider my humble request to like and subscribe. It's completely free. Sarah Matthews's fingers trembled on the single key as she pushed open the door to her grandmother's Victorian house, their last resort after 3 months of living out of their car. Behind her, Emma stood, with arms crossed and jaw set. Jake flinched at the door's ominous creak, and little Lily clutched her threadbare teddy bear against her chest. "It's just temporary," Sarah whispered, more to herself than to them, the familiar lie tasting bitter on her tongue. A thunderous crack overhead split the silence, and before anyone could react, a rusted pipe burst through the ceiling plaster, sending a cascade of murky water down the faded wallpaper. As her children scattered with panicked cries, Sarah spotted something dislodged by the water's force, a business card sliding across the warping floorboards. She snatched it up, her blood turning cold at the developer's logo, identical to the one on the letters that had mysteriously started arriving at their foreclosed suburban home just days after David walked out. The same logo she'd glimpsed on documents in his office the night before he emptied their bank accounts and disappeared. Over the rushing water, she heard the unmistakable sound of a car in the driveway, the building inspector, arriving exactly when the damage would appear worst. This wasn't bad luck. This was deliberate. "Mum, the ceiling's falling in!" Lily shrieked, retreating to the open doorway. Emma grabbed a metal bucket from beside the fireplace, her face a mask of resignation. "Of course it is. What else did you expect?" Sarah thrust the business card into her pocket as footsteps approached from outside. She grabbed a dented pot from an open moving box and positioned herself under the streaming water, the cold shock of it hitting her shoulders, making her gasp. The inspector appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. He was a thin man with permanent frown lines, his gaze immediately finding the water damage overhead. "Mrs. Matthews, I presume." "Ms.," Sarah corrected automatically, pot overflowing in her hands. "We just arrived." Clearly the previous owner neglected basic maintenance. He made a show of writing something down. "I'll need to do a full inspection. Considering the visible water damage, I'm guessing there's extensive code violations throughout." Jake pressed himself against the wall, his breathing quickening. "Are we going to be homeless again?" he whispered to no one in particular. The inspector's eyes narrowed. "You'll have 90 days to bring everything up to code. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to condemn the property." 90 days? Sarah lowered the pot. "That's hardly enough time to—" "It's the law. I suggest you start with that plumbing." He handed her a document. "Here's the preliminary inspection notice. I'll be back next week for a detailed assessment." As he turned to leave, Sarah noticed the same developer's logo on his jacket pocket. "You work for Coastal Vista Development." The words escaped before she could stop them. He paused. "I consult for them occasionally." "Why?" "No reason, just curious." She forced a smile that felt like cracking glass. After he left, Emma threw the bucket down. "Great, just great. Why couldn't Dad have left us the condo in San Diego instead of his debt?" "Emma," Sarah warned, glancing at Lily, whose lower lip was trembling. "What? It's true. He traded us in for a newer model and left us with nothing." Emma kicked at a sodden cardboard box. "I'm going to get my stuff from the car before it gets ruined, too." As the front door slammed behind her daughter, Sarah sank down onto a water-spotted stair. Jake silently handed her a dishcloth, his eyes on the floor. "Is Daddy coming to help us fix the pipes?" Lily asked, stroking her teddy bear's matted fur. Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat. "No, sweetheart, but we don't need him. I used to design home renovations, remember? Before you were born." before you gave it all up for him," Jake murmured, surprising her. He rarely spoke about their father. Sarah reached for her son's hand. "We're going to be okay." "How?" His voice cracked. She looked around at the peeling wallpaper, the water-damaged floorboards, the crumbling ceiling. One room at a time. Later that evening, after setting up air mattresses in the driest corner of the living room, Sarah examined the business card more closely under the beam of her flashlight. The back had handwritten numbers that appeared to be a property valuation, far higher than what the building inspector had implied the house was worth. "What are you looking at?" Emma's voice startled her. Sarah quickly tucked the card away. "Nothing important. This whole thing is a disaster." Emma wrapped her arms around herself. "We should just sell it and find an apartment somewhere." "We can't, not yet." Sarah hesitated, then decided her oldest deserved the truth. "Your father left us with so much debt that my credit is destroyed. No one will rent to us. This house is literally all we have." Emma's face hardened in the shadows. "Then he wins, again. Not if I can help it." Sarah stood, determination pushing through her exhaustion. "Tomorrow we start cleaning up. I need to see what we're working with." "Whatever." Emma turned away, but not before Sarah caught the glint of tears. After the children were asleep, Sarah crept into the kitchen with her flashlight. The water had been shut off at the main valve, leaving the house eerily quiet except for occasional drips. She began opening cabinets, searching for any clue about the grandmother she barely remembered. In the last drawer, beneath faded contact paper, she found a sealed envelope addressed to her in shaky handwriting. Sarah slid her finger under the flap, heart pounding. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just one sentence. "The real treasure is behind the bookcase in the study." She turned the paper over, but there was nothing more, and she hadn't seen any study or bookcase in their brief tour of the house. Outside, headlights swept across the kitchen window. Sarah ducked down instinctively, watching as a car slowed in front of the house before continuing down the road. The sense of being watched prickled at her skin. Whatever was happening here went beyond bad luck or coincidence, and somehow her ex-husband was involved. Sarah clutched the letter, a strange calm settling over her. David had taken everything from them once. She wouldn't let him do it again. Morning light filtered through dusty windows, casting long shadows across the living room where Sarah lay awake on her air mattress. She'd spent half the night thinking about her grandmother's cryptic note. A study with a bookcase. She needed to find it. "Mom?" Lily's small voice broke the silence. "I'm hungry." Sarah sat up, pushing her tangled hair from her face. "Let's see what we can find in the kitchen, sweetie." The kitchen was a time capsule of faded, floral wallpaper and ancient appliances. Sarah rummaged through their hastily packed supplies, producing a box of cereal and some slightly bruised apples. "Is this breakfast?" Emma appeared in the doorway, her tone making it clear what she thought of their options. "For today?" Sarah poured cereal into mismatched bowls she'd found in a cabinet. "We'll go shopping after we explore the house properly." Jake shuffled in last, eyes puffy from poor sleep. "The water smells funny." "It's probably just old pipes," Sarah tried to sound confident. "We'll add bottled water to our shopping list." After breakfast, Sarah pulled out a notebook. "Okay, team, we need to figure out what we're dealing with. Lily, you're with me. Emma and Jake, can you check what rooms are on the second floor?" "Why can't I stay down here?" Jake's anxiety was visible in the way he clutched his water bottle. "Because I need Emma's help identifying problems, and she needs yours carrying things." Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "Just look for any obvious water damage and count how many rooms there are." As the older kids reluctantly headed upstairs, Sarah led Lily through the downstairs rooms. The front parlor connected to a dining room which led to the kitchen. A small bathroom off the kitchen appeared to have been added in the 1950s, but no study. "What's that door?" Lily pointed to a narrow door beneath the staircase that Sarah had assumed was a closet. When Sarah pulled it open, instead of a shallow storage space, a short hallway stretched before them, leading to another door. "Good eye, Lily." The door at the end was locked. Sarah jiggled the handle, then remembered the key ring she'd been given by the lawyer. It had multiple keys of different sizes. The third one she tried clicked in the lock. "It's like a secret passage," Lily whispered, excitement replacing her usual sadness for the first time in months. The door swung open to reveal a small wood-paneled room lined with built-in bookshelves. Dust motes danced in the beam of sunlight from a single window. A roll-top desk stood in one corner, and a leather chair faced a cold fireplace. "The study," Sarah breathed. Lily darted inside. "Look, books with pictures." She pulled a large volume from a bottom shelf. Sarah examined the bookshelves carefully. Which one held the treasure her grandmother had mentioned? She ran her fingers along the edges of each section, looking for any sign of a hidden compartment. "Mom!" Emma's voice called from upstairs. "You need to see this." "Coming." Sarah hesitated, torn between investigating further and responding to the urgency in Emma's voice. "Lily, let's go see what they found. We'll come back here after." Upstairs, they found Emma and Jake in what must have been the master bedroom. A large section of the ceiling had collapsed into a pile of soggy plaster on the floor. "It's not just pipe damage," Emma pointed up to the exposed beams. "Look at the wood. It's all rotted." Sarah's heart sank as she examined the blackened, crumbling timber. "Water damage from the roof. This has been happening for years." "So we're basically living under a sieve." Emma's voice cracked. "Awesome." "We'll get tarps," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. "Cover the damaged sections until we can fix it properly." "Fix it how?" Emma demanded. "With what money? With what skills?" Sarah felt 3 pairs of eyes on her, waiting for answers she didn't have. She swallowed hard. "One problem at a time. First, let's finish exploring and make a complete list." Back downstairs, a knock at the front door startled them. Sarah opened it to find a broad-shouldered man in his 40s holding a toolbox. "Michael Klein," he introduced himself. "I own the hardware store in town. Word travels fast around here. Heard you had some plumbing issues." Sarah's pride warred with practicality. "We can't afford—" "First visits on the house," he interrupted with a kind smile. "Neighborly welcome and all that. Let me at least cap that burst pipe properly before you get more water damage." While Michael worked on the pipe, Sarah returned to the study with Lily. "Let's see if we can find what Grandma was talking about." They methodically checked each bookcase, pulling books forward to look behind them, feeling for loose panels or hidden switches. "Maybe it's a special book," Lily suggested, flipping through a collection of architecture drawings. Sarah stared at the bookcases, trying to think like her grandmother. Then she noticed something. One section of shelving didn't quite match the wood tone of the others. She pressed against it experimentally and felt a slight give. "Lily, help me pull these books out." Together they emptied the slightly different bookcase, revealing small marks that looked like fingerprints at the edges. Sarah pressed both sides simultaneously and pulled. With a soft click, the entire bookcase swung forward like a door, revealing a narrow room beyond. Lily gasped. "A real secret room!" The hidden space was filled with furniture covered in dusty sheets. Sarah pulled back the nearest cover, revealing an exquisitely crafted wooden chair with intricate carvings along its back. "More old furniture," Sarah sighed, disappointed. She'd hoped for something more obviously valuable. "It's pretty." Lily ran her fingers over the polished wood. Michael appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. "Pipe's capped for now, but you'll need—" He stopped, staring at the chair. "Where did you get that?" "It was hidden in this room." Sarah gestured around them. Michael stepped closer, examining the chair with reverence. "Do you know what this is?" "Old furniture?" "This is a Margaret Matthews original." He looked up at Sarah. "Your grandmother was Margaret Matthews?" "Yes, I barely knew her." Michael gave a low whistle. "She was a legend in certain circles. These pieces could be worth a small fortune to the right collectors." Sarah blinked, struggling to process his words. "These old things?" "Old things crafted by one of the most innovative female furniture designers of her time." Michael carefully lifted the chair. "Her work is rare because she stopped producing publicly after some controversy in the 60s. Collectors have been hunting her pieces for decades." For the first time since David left, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. "So we could sell them?" "You could," Michael nodded, "but you might want to learn more first. There's a story here." As they uncovered more pieces, Sarah noticed Jake had slipped into the room and was running his fingers over the carved details of a small table. "It's like a puzzle," he murmured, tracing the pattern. "Mom," Emma called from the hallway, "there's someone else here." Sarah froze as a familiar voice carried from the front of the house. "Sarah? Are you in there? It's David. We need to talk." Sarah's pulse hammered in her throat. "Stay here," she whispered to the children before stepping into the hallway, pulling the study door nearly closed behind her. David stood in the foyer, designer sunglasses pushed up on his perfectly styled hair. He looked exactly as he had the day he left. Expensive watch, casual confidence, not a hint of the destruction he'd caused. "What are you doing here?" Sarah kept her voice low and level. "Checking on my kids. You're not answering my calls." He glanced around the water-damaged entryway with poorly disguised disgust. "So this is where you ended up." "You knew exactly where we'd end up." Sarah crossed her arms. "That was the plan, wasn't it?" A flicker of something, surprise, guilt, crossed his face before his practiced smile returned. "I don't know what you're talking about. Look, I came to help. Tessa and I—" "Tessa?" The name felt like gravel in Sarah's mouth. "My fiancé." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Her father's a developer. He's willing to take this place off your hands. Fair market value. You could start fresh somewhere decent." Michael appeared from the hallway, toolbox in hand. "Everything okay here, Sarah?" David's eyes narrowed. "I'm having a private conversation with my wife." "Ex-wife," Sarah corrected. "And we're done talking. The house isn't for sale." "Don't be stubborn." David's pleasant veneer slipped. "This place is falling apart. You can't possibly fix it." "You'd be surprised what I can do." Sarah opened the front door. "Goodbye, David." After a moment of tense silence, David stepped toward the door. "Those kids deserve better than this dump. Think about them for once." The door clicked shut behind him. Sarah leaned against it, legs suddenly weak. "Who's Tessa?" Emma stood at the bottom of the stairs, eyes hard. "Your father's new—" Sarah couldn't finish. "Replacement family?" Emma's voice was brittle. "Figures." "Emma, save it." Emma turned away. "I'm going for a walk." "Stay close to the house," Sarah called after her as the front door slammed for the second time. Michael cleared his throat. "Family stuff. I should go." "Wait." Sarah rubbed her temples. "You said my grandmother's furniture is valuable. How valuable exactly? Hard to say without an expert, but enough to fix this house if that's what you're thinking. He hesitated. There's more to the story, though. Your grandmother had some controversy, you mentioned. Sarah sighed. Add it to the list of family secrets. Michael wrote his phone number on a scrap of paper. Call if you need anything. Hardware stores open 7 days a week. After he left, Sarah returned to the hidden room where Lily had wrapped herself in a dusty velvet curtain, playing princess, while Jake methodically examined each piece of furniture. They all have this mark. He showed Sarah a small engraved symbol on the underside of a table. And dates. This one says 1963. Sarah ran her finger over the engraving, feeling a strange connection to the grandmother she'd never known. Let's see what else we can find. Behind the furniture, built into the wall, was a small safe. Sarah tried the keys from her ring, but none fit. Another mystery for another day, she murmured. Mom. Lily had abandoned her princess game. Is Daddy going to take us away from here? Sarah pulled her daughter close. No, sweetie, this is our home now. But it's broken, Lily's voice wavered. So are we, Sarah whispered into her hair, but we'll fix both. That evening, after a simple dinner of sandwiches, Sarah spread out paper on the kitchen table. Family meeting, she announced. Jake appeared immediately, while Lily brought her teddy bear to the table. Emma was still missing, having returned from her walk, only to shut herself in one of the upstairs bedrooms. I'll talk to her later, Sarah decided. For now, let's make a plan. She drew a rough outline of the house. We need to prioritize. Roof and structural repairs first, then plumbing and electrical. How? Jake asked, the perpetual worry line between his eyebrows deepening. I'm going to research the furniture we found, see what it's worth. In the meantime, she took a deep breath. I'm going to use my design skills again. I saw a "Help Wanted" sign at the hardware store. Not exactly high-end interior design, but it's a start. Jake nodded solemnly. I can help clean up. Me too. Lily bounced in her chair. Sarah smiled, the first genuine one in weeks. Team Matthews, we can do this. Later, with the younger kids asleep on their air mattresses, Sarah knocked gently on Emma's door. Can we talk? No answer came, but the door wasn't locked. Sarah found Emma sitting on the bare floor, scrolling through old photos on her phone, pictures of their old life. I miss it too, Sarah said softly, sitting beside her. No, you don't. Emma didn't look up. You were miserable there. The observation startled Sarah. What makes you say that? Dad always criticized your ideas, said you didn't understand real design anymore. Emma put her phone down. I heard everything. Sarah felt exposed, as if Emma had opened a door she'd kept carefully closed. It was complicated. It wasn't. He treated you like garbage and you let him. Emma finally met her eyes. Are you going to let him take this house too? No. Sarah's voice strengthened. No, I'm not. Good. Emma's shoulder relaxed slightly against Sarah's. Because I saw the furniture that guy was excited about. It's actually kind of amazing. They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Emma spoke again. I found something too, under the window seat in here. She handed Sarah a leather-bound book. It looks like Grandma's diary. Sarah opened it carefully. The first entry was dated April 1962. Today they laughed me out of the guild meeting, said no woman could have designed the helix chair, must have stolen the plans from my husband. If only they knew Frederick couldn't design his way out of a paper bag. I'm done trying to prove myself to them. From now on, I work for myself. and history can forget my name." Sarah read passages aloud to Emma, their shared indignation building with each entry, documenting the talented woman whose work had been dismissed and devalued. The final entry, dated just months before her death, mentioned Sarah directly. "My granddaughter has the gift. I see it in the sketches my daughter sends, but they've stifled her, just as they tried to stifle me. I hope someday she finds her way to my sanctuary and understands what I'm leaving her isn't just furniture, but freedom." Sarah closed the diary, tears stinging her eyes. "I never knew her. My parents said she was difficult, eccentric." "Sounds like she was just ahead of her time," Emma said, "like somebody else I know." The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of hammering. She found Michael on the front porch, installing a tarp over the damaged roof section. "I brought some supplies," he said when she appeared. "Consider it an investment in your grandmother's legacy." "Why are you helping us?" Sarah asked, accepting the cup of coffee he offered from a thermos. "Margaret gave me my first job when no one else would hire a 16-year-old with a record." He smiled at her surprise. "Nothing serious, just teenage stupidity, but she saw something in me worth saving." As they worked together, securing the tarp, a sleek black car pulled up at the curb. A woman emerged, expensively dressed, hair perfectly styled. "That's private property," she called, approaching with clipboard in hand. "Town ordinance prohibits unauthorized construction without permits." "We're just preventing further water damage," Sarah explained. "Who are you?" "Tessa Reynolds, Coastal Vista Development." She extended a manicured hand that Sarah deliberately didn't take. "I understand you've met my fiancé, David." "Your fiancé, my children's father," Sarah corrected. "What do you want?" "To be candid, this property is holding up an important development project." Tessa's professional smile didn't reach her eyes. "We're prepared to make a very generous offer." "Not interested." Sarah turned back to Michael and the tarp. "Ms. Matthews," Tessa's voice hardened, "this house has multiple code violations. My company has significant influence with the town council. Making this difficult would be unwise." Sarah turned slowly. "Are you threatening me?" "Advising you." Tessa placed a business card on the porch railing. "Call when you're ready to be reasonable." As Tessa drove away, Sarah noticed Emma watching from the doorway. "So that's the replacement," Emma said flatly. "Nobody could replace us," Sarah replied, surprised at the steel in her own voice. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Sarah secured a part-time position at the hardware store, working around Michael's schedule to maximize time for house repairs. The children settled into a routine, Jake meticulously documenting every piece of furniture they found, Emma researching their grandmother online, and Lily adopting the smallest chair as her special treasure, polishing it daily with an old t-shirt. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Emma burst in, laptop in hand. "Mum, you need to see this." She placed the computer on the counter. "I found articles about Grandma's lawsuit." The screen showed a yellowed newspaper clipping. "Local craftswoman faces allegations of negligence in workshop accident." Sarah scanned the article, her stomach tightening. According to the report, a client had been seriously injured when a chair collapsed during a consultation at her grandmother's workshop. The client, Thomas Reynolds, had sued for damages. "Reynolds," Sarah breathed. "That can't be coincidence." "There's more." Emma clicked to another article. The case was settled out of court, but afterward, all the local stores stopped carrying her work. She was basically blacklisted. "That's why she created the hidden workshop," Sarah realized. "She kept creating, even when they tried to stop her." The doorbell interrupted their discovery. Sarah opened it to find the building inspector, clipboard in hand. "Follow-up inspection," he announced, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Sarah trailed him through the house, anxiety mounting as he made notes and took photographs of every floor. When they reached the study, she positioned herself in front of the hidden door, praying he wouldn't notice. "You've made some improvements," he acknowledged reluctantly, "but nowhere near enough. These support beams in the kitchen are compromised. The wiring throughout is outdated. You're looking at tens of thousands in repairs." "I'm working on it," Sarah said. "The 90 days isn't up yet." "About that?" He adjusted his glasses. "The council is meeting tomorrow to discuss accelerating the timeline on properties in this neighborhood, public safety concerns." After he left, Sarah found Michael in town record section of the library. "They're changing the rules," she told him. "They can't do that, can they?" "They shouldn't be able to," Michael frowned, "but the Reynolds family has owned half this town for generations. Thomas Reynolds is Tessa's grandfather." "The same man who sued my grandmother." Sarah pressed her fingertips against her temples. "This isn't about development. It's personal." Michael helped her search through old records, finding more connections. The accident that had ruined Margaret's reputation had occurred right after she refused to sell her property, the final piece Reynolds needed for a previous development project. "We need proof the accident was staged," Sarah said. "Something that would hold up legally. Maybe she left something in that safe you mentioned." That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah returned to the hidden room. She examined the safe carefully, trying every combination she could think of. Her grandmother's birthday, the house address, the year the house was built. Nothing worked. Frustrated, she leaned back against a cabinet, accidentally knocking over a small wooden box Jake had catalogued earlier. As she picked it up, something rattled inside. The box had no obvious opening, but when she pressed the decorative elements in sequence, a hidden drawer slid out. Inside lay a key and a folded paper. The note contained a single line: "The day you were born." Sarah's birthday. She tried the combination: 10/22/84. The safe clicked open. Inside, she found a leather portfolio containing photographs, documents, and a micro-cassette recorder. The photos showed a workshop with a chair identical to the one in the accident report, but with close-ups of deliberately weakened joints and partially sawed supports. The cassette contained a conversation between Thomas Reynolds and another man, discussing how to sabotage the chair during the demonstration, clear evidence of a deliberate setup. Sarah's hands shook as she gathered everything. This wasn't just about saving the house anymore. This was about restoring her grandmother's reputation and protecting her family from history repeating itself. The town council meeting was packed. Sarah sat nervously in the back, the portfolio clutched in her lap. Emma sat beside her, having insisted on coming despite Sarah's reluctance to involve her. "It's my fight too," Emma had said simply. When the motion to accelerate condemnation of unsafe properties came up, Sarah recognized the deliberately vague language for what it was: a targeted attack. This ordinance would invalidate the standard 90-day remediation period, Councilwoman Parker noted with concern. "Are we certain this is necessary?" "Absolutely." Tessa stepped to the podium in her capacity as development liaison. "We have documented safety hazards that put residents at risk." Sarah stood, heart pounding. "I'd like to speak." All eyes turned to her as she walked to the front, Emma trailing behind her. Sarah placed the portfolio on the podium. "My name is Sarah Matthews. My grandmother was Margaret Matthews, whose reputation was destroyed in this town based on fabricated evidence." She opened the portfolio. "Before you vote, you should know the truth about the Reynolds family's tactics." Gasps filled the room as Sarah played the cassette recording. Thomas Reynolds, now in his 80s, shifted uncomfortably in his seat at the front. David, sitting beside Tessa, looked stunned. "This isn't just about one house," Sarah continued. "It's about a family willing to destroy lives for profit, then and now." She looked directly at Tessa. History doesn't have to repeat itself. The council voted to table the motion pending investigation. Outside the town hall, David approached Sarah cautiously. "I didn't know," he said quietly, "about any of this." "Didn't know or didn't want to know?" Sarah asked. He had no answer. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, her daughter asked, "Are we staying here forever now?" "Would you like that?" Sarah smoothed her hair. Lily nodded. "My chair belongs here, and I think we do too." In the following weeks, the town rallied around them. Michael organized a community workshop day where local contractors volunteered time to help with major repairs. The Historical Society, excited about Margaret's rediscovered work, offered a grant to preserve the house as a historical landmark. Emma began cataloging the furniture collection with Jake's meticulous assistance, creating a small exhibition in the front parlor. Lily gave guided tours to visitors, proudly showing off her chair. Sarah converted the hidden workshop into a studio where she began designing again, incorporating elements of her grandmother's style with her own modern approach. Local artisans sought her advice, and soon she was teaching workshops on furniture design. 6 months after their arrival, as autumn leaves swirled across the repaired porch, Sarah stood in the doorway, watching her children in the yard. Jake was sketching designs for a birdhouse. Emma was photographing Lily, posing dramatically with falling leaves. "You did it," Michael said, joining her on the porch. "Saved the house, restored your grandmother's name." "We did it," Sarah corrected, making room for him beside her. Inside, the house still showed signs of its age. Creaky floorboards, windows that stuck when the humidity rose, the occasional mysterious draft. But now these quirks felt less like flaws and more like character, like the beautiful imperfections in handcrafted furniture that made each piece unique. What they had found inside the old house wasn't just furniture, or evidence, or even a legacy. They had found themselves, their strength, their resilience, their ability to rebuild what had been broken. And like her grandmother's finest creations, what they had built together would endure. For now, that was enough. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of love to break down walls and bridge any divide. Please do comment your feedback and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of family, redemption, and the triumph of love over pride. Remember, it's never too late to change your story.